This week in Alabama, the tale was finally told, and Doug Jones defeated Roy Moore, the first time a Democrat has won a Senate seat in Alabama in roughly 25 years. The last one who won became a Republican not long after taking his seat. This is a state that's a plus 22 Republican swing ordinarily. So when you deviate that far from the generic ballot, you've got to ask what really went on. Roy Moore is still not conceding. He thinks, or his people figure, that somehow there are enough military ballots and other ballots that haven't been counted yet to make a difference, or at least to force it into the automatic runoff that a half a percentage point under Alabama law would require. That's not happening. The margin is now about 20,000 votes. It's really not that close. What's remarkable in the Alabama vote is, though, that there were 25,000 more or less write-in votes. That meant that people went to the polls where there was only one office on the ballot, specifically to vote against both candidates. That says a lot. So Doug Jones is going to take his seat in the U.S. Senate. The questions are really two. One, how soon? And second, for how long? How soon remains an open question. The process obviously has to be certified by the Secretary of State in Alabama, something that ordinarily wouldn't take place until the end of the month. In between now and then, there's going to be a tremendous push to get the tax vote through, the first major win, not only for the Trump administration, but for the American people as well, to get the engines of economic growth ramped up even higher than they already are. So look for a tax vote sooner rather than later, and for Doug Jones to probably be seated somewhere either at the end of the month or the beginning of next year. The question then, of course, is for how long? Is this simply some situation where he's going to have a 3-year seat in the U.S. Senate, or is there any scenario under which it extends beyond that? I'm betting that he gets a very short duration in the U.S. Senate. And here's the good news for the Republicans after some pretty salty and negative news this week out of Alabama. In 2018, the midterm elections, where the incumbent party generally doesn't fare that well, of the 33 seats up in the U.S. Senate, 25 of them are democratically held, or held by Democrats, better said, right now. They've got to defend 25 out of 33 seats, including 10 in states carried by Donald Trump, 5 of which were carried by more than 20 points. Think about that. Huge victories for Donald Trump just a couple of years ago will be playing out in the 2018 elections. Of course, he carried Alabama by a large margin too. So the key, obviously, is that you've got to have good, quality, credible candidates running. That's going to be the real issue for Republicans, putting their best foot forward at every level in 2018. One that you want to watch, where a great candidate could be running for the Republicans, Governor Rick Scott for the U.S. Senate there, in a state that's always been very, very close. I think you take it out of the Bill Nelson column and put it into the Republican column if Governor Rick Scott, very popular, has done a great job as governor there, gets into that race. So from the somewhat sublime to the little bit less sublime, the other subject that everybody's talking about now is football. Now, I was one that was kind of a boycott the NFL this year guy, but I just can't resist after a while, despite all the nonsense that's going on in the NFL. And as a Pennsylvanian, I am ebullient, there's your word for the week, over the fact that it looks like there's a real possibility of an all-Pennsylvania Super Bowl. Think about that. Here you've got, in the Commonwealth of PA, the 2 best records in the NFL. They've had that now for the better part of a month. It's happened before. In 2001, both the Steelers and the Eagles, who have a great history between the two of them, with traded franchises between Burt Bell and Art Rooney, and the Steagles, the conglomeration of the two teams during the Second World War, and a lot of back and forth ever since then. But in 2001, both teams played on a given Sunday afternoon for the right to go to the Super Bowl. Both managed to lose. 3 years later, in 2004, the Steelers lost to the Patriots, the Eagles made it into the Super Bowl, and then lost to the hated Patriots once they got there. So 2017, 2018 might be the magic year. The Eagles' chances have been dealt a little bit of a blow, although it remains to be seen how big a one with the loss of Carson Wentz. And you've just got to say something about that young man. 24 years old and a great leader. If there was sainthood in the city of Philadelphia, he'd have it or attained it already. But if you listen to the comments that he made after his devastating injury, and we all pray for a quick recuperation from the surgery that he has to undergo, here was a a guy who was, dramatically influential in terms of his leadership, his witness as a Christian young man, and the role model that he is. And you think about what's going on in the NFL over the past couple of years, our young kids really need role models like Carson Wentz. So say a prayer for him, and let's hope for an all-Pennsylvania Super Bowl. Imagine the trash talk that would take place for the 2 weeks between the end of the regular playoffs and that Super Bowl if it was the Steelers and the Eagles. It would be epic. That would be the best 60 seconds of your life. But for now, that's the best 60-ish seconds of this week.